Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Allison Peppercorn, and I am the Recreation Manager for the City of Scotts Valley. I'd like to welcome you to the Wildfire Preparedness and Homeowners Insurance Workshop presented by the City of Scotts Valley and the Scotts Valley Recreation. I just have a few housekeeping details to go over with you. If this is your first time in the Scotts Valley Community Theater, welcome. We're very thankful for this place. Restrooms are located out in the back corner. Look for the white curtain, and the restrooms are right outside the doors there. Our emergency exits are the door that you came in the front here, as well as both of the back corners. We don't allow any food in the audience area. We do allow water as long as there's a lid on it, so please be mindful of that. And now I would like to bring up our moderator for the evening. I'd like to introduce Scotts Valley's Vice Mayor, Derek Kim.
Thank everyone for being here. It's a really important event. You can tell by how many people turned out from our community just how important this is. I'm sure many of you were part of the evacuations in 2020. It's the first time in the history of Scotts Valley that our city was evacuated, and I hope it's the last. And in that time, our community had to go through a lot. We lost 950 homes in the mountains, and it was a complete tragedy for our county. And now we're facing kind of a second tragedy, which is an insurance crisis that we're all facing right now in the area. I've talked to a lot of our residents. People have had their policies canceled. And so we're going to learn tonight two things. One, we're going to start the evening with our fire chiefs and people from our fire community explaining to us how to prepare our homes better and how to prepare our families and our community as a whole. And then we're going to move on to the second half. We're going to hear from the California Department of Insurance. We're going to hear a presentation from them on what they're doing in working to get our insurance markets reopened in California, what we can expect going forward. We're also going to hear from our insurance specialists here in Scotts Valley, local insurance providers, and our local real estate community on what you can expect going forward and how to handle it. So one of the things just to go over tonight, you're going to find some note cards that will be passed out throughout the evening. You may have grabbed some outside. If you have questions that come up, please write those down. We'll be collecting those towards the end of the presentation tonight. Not during the fire presentation, but after the insurance and real estate presentation later this evening. So note your questions. We will be taking those. And then before we begin, I have a few thank yous as well. Big thank you, and I really invite you to put your hands together for our Parks and Rec department. We asked them. Allison, who you just heard from, Allison Peppercorn is our rec division manager, and along with Jen Dunbar, the recreation coordinator, we kind of asked them an unreasonable task, which was to learn everything there is to learn about insurance and fire preparedness in the last couple of weeks, and then put on an entire presentation for our community about it. And I'm really excited with what you're going to hear tonight, because I think they've done a really great job. So thank you to that team so much. I also want to thank our city staff and our elected leaders. We have our entire city council is here tonight. Mayor Randy Johnson is here. We have our, I saw council member Donna Lind is here. Hi, Donna. We've got council member Jack Dillis and council member Alan Tim. So put your hands together for our city council. Also, Gail Pellerin, our state assemblywoman. She's in Sacramento right now, but she sent Maureen McCarty from her office here tonight to answer any questions you may have. I also want to thank her office because they've been a liaison for our community. If you've had a hard time getting insurance, or you've been trying to get on the FAIR plan, you may have found it kind of difficult to do. Her office has been a liaison with the State Department of Insurance, helping our community get their questions answered and get policies actually allocated. So thank you to her office as well. I also want to thank, we have our supervisorial candidate, Monica Martinez, I know is here tonight, who's going to be working to represent the 5th District. And I want to thank also Supervisor McPherson and Supervisor Friend and Supervisor Koenig, whose offices helped us with our preparation for this evening. And I have a real pleasure, actually, to welcome our 5th District Supervisor tonight. As you all know, he's probably someone that doesn't need any introduction. Bruce McPherson was our local state assembly person. He became our state senator, and most recently, before becoming our supervisor, he was our California Secretary of State. So I'm going to bring him up for a few welcome remarks, and I just want you to put your hands together for Bruce McPherson.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here tonight, and welcome to this Wildfire Community Preparedness event. Thank you for the City of Scotts Valley and all the organizations who put this together. I know we look forward to hearing from our CAL FIRE and Scotts Valley fire leaders, as well as our insurance and real estate representatives. It's really, it can go left unsaid, it's critical that we hear directly from the agencies that are engaged in the preparedness, prevention, and response to wildfires. Last night, I was up in Boulder Creek to discuss this with a group at the Boulder Creek Rec Center there. And today's supervisors meeting, which just ended about an hour ago, we received a presentation from the Insurance Commissioner representative, who you're going to hear from tonight, about the efforts to curb the insurance crisis that we're facing. But the board also voted to extend the county's contract with Forley for expedited CZU fire rebuilding, and received an update on our climate action plan that we have as part of our strategy to reduce fire risk. With 7 federally declared disasters in the last 7 years in Santa Cruz County, we are in the front lines, and we will be for some time when it comes to the impacts of climate change and emergency response. And the key to a strong and successful emergency response is the community preparedness, and that's why we're having this tonight, and I know there's obviously a lot of interest in this. I would like to now introduce the distinguished panel that we have over here. Scotts Valley Battalion Chief Chris Stubendorf. CAL FIRE Senior Defensible Space Inspector Andrew Clark. Firewise Coach Sally Mack. And with that, I'm just going to let them take this away and discuss what we can do to prevent a disaster. Whether it's coming or not, I don't want to see 8 years. I hope we're through with it for a while, but we need to be prepared one way or the other. So go ahead, John, and ladies and gentlemen.
Well, good evening. My name is Chris Stubendorf. I'm a battalion chief at the Scotts Valley Fire District. I'm not just a battalion chief, I'm also a Scotts Valleyan, I guess you would say. Born, raised in Scotts Valley. My parents still live here. In fact, they're in the crowd. Try not to embarrass my parents. So yeah, this community has been, a part of me for a long part of my life, and it's been a joy to be working here in Scotts Valley. I've been working here for the last 24 years. So speaking of family, this is what I'm here to talk about, is a lot about family preparedness and the unfortunate reality that we do face today. 4 years ago, I would have probably not really even considered most of Scotts Valley a dangerous place. It was not until the CZU happened. Of course, that was a big wake-up call for all of us. I was on the initial attack engine when the CZU combined with the other fires and sent off into Boulder Creek and Bonnie Doon and other places. So I stayed up for 3 days, and it was not, normally when you go out on fires, especially as a firefighter, you're like, it's kind of the adrenaline rush, you're going to it. It was nothing like that. It was survival. And that's exactly what it turned into be. And we did all we could to deal with what was going on. And I think of how lucky we got, because our first thing that we did was just trying to evacuate people. We didn't have time to prep homes or to make a stand. We had to fight for life, and that was the thing that we were doing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how you can be better prepared in the event that a fire does come through your neighborhood. So some topics we're going to go over are on household evacuation planning, identifying evacuation routes, monitoring conditions, responding to emergency situations, and then also about our fire district's Community Connect program. So, now you've heard of the having a go bag, so to speak, being ready, set, go. That's oftentimes the main phrase that State Fire Marshal is using, FEMA is using. It is good to have a pack ready to go. Now, what do you put in that pack? And it's like, well, you know, do I do pictures? Do I do keepsakes? No, you want to kind of get through the basics kind of stuff. This is a ready, set, go type pack where you need to leave now, and you don't have a necessary place to go to. You're going to be just getting out of the house. Just by a show of hands, does anybody have a pack set aside that they can just keep there? Good. How many of you did that 5 years ago? Okay, a few. So obviously with the recent events, there's been more focus on having something like this. So these are just some items, some basic items like water, non-perishable food, extra cell phone batteries, charger, battery powered or a hand crank radio that can receive NOAA weather alerts, flashlights, batteries, first aid kits, whistle sign for help, a dust mask potentially. You know, we're not just talking about wildfire. Santa Cruz County is pretty much prone for just about every type of disaster, right? So I'm sure many of you were here in 1989 when there was a little shaker that happened as well. So if it's not that, it seems like it's mudslides or floods. So voice tellets, I'm not going to read off every one, but these are just some things you can consider. And FEMA is actually a really good resource. That's where I got most of these things. The local maps too, that's especially important, and the reason I put that on there is because what happens to connectivity in a disaster area? It's gone. And if you're a millennial, you do not know how to read a map, but if you're... but if some of you, other parts, thank you. A map is really good, especially if you're trying to figure out where evacuation centers are, temporary refuge areas, et cetera, et cetera. So, so just a good thing to have is also local maps. So, these are some other items here that are additional items to consider, especially for you as an individual. Prescription medications. That's an important one. That's not something you're going to have in your to-go bag, right? But you definitely want to grab those on the way out, because you don't want to be, if you're required to take a certain medication, obviously now we can bring in a different problem if you don't have it. So infant formula for kids, diapers, important family documents, if you have a copy of that. If not, a good idea is to keep it like a PDF copy on your cell phone. So, or if you have like a remote cloud that you can at least get your insurance documents, deeds, things like that. So some extra cash and change, emergency reference material book such as a first aid book. So there's a few other things. Ready.gov, if you go to that website, they outline a lot of these different type of things that you can do to help prepare yourself. So, all right, and a big thing is a complete change of clothing. Believe it or not, when I worked as a firefighter and battalion chief, I have a whole other wardrobe stuffed in the back of my vehicle just for that reason, because the CZU was actually kind of a wake-up call for me, because I didn't have that, and after 3 days and the same stuff, it starts to rot. So, all right. Okay. Other things, just some other kit items. I mean, you don't have to have all this stuff, but these are just a good starter list to have as well. So, and here's the thing about the next part is about evacuating and evacuation routes. So, which way are we going, right? What are our evacuation routes? Well, when it comes to wildfire, there's no pre-designated evacuation route unless you happen to live in an area where that's a known quantity. Like, anybody live up on Weston Road from here? There's only one way in and one way out. So that's kind of, a hard thing. So evacuation routes are going to differ depending on what's going on with the fire. If your evacuation route, what you think is your evacuation route, sends you towards the fire, probably best to go in the other direction. you're gonna have police officers, firefighters out and about directing people where to go for an evacuation. So that's what we're going to try to do initially. We may not even get you out of the fire area, we may just get you to a safe zone. So a temporary refuge area, like a golf course, let's say. So at least we're gonna try to get you out. So, but you should at least plan on knowing 2 ways out from your home. There may be more as well. So, but for some of you, like people that live on Weston, there's only 1 way in, 1 way out. So evacuating early, sooner than later is vitally important. So, and when you're told to evacuate, we're not just saying that. That's one thing that some people, we get that a lot. As far as like, hey, you know, this is an evacuation zone. I'm fine. I've been evacuated a bunch of times. This never happens. It does. That's why we ask for your dental records, so that we can maybe identify you if we come back. It sounds harsh, but that's really kind of what we have to work with. We can't force you to leave, but we just need to know that, you know, at least somebody's there, or at least we've tried. So evacuation planning can be kind of complex depending on what's going on in the situation. One thing to do is to make sure that you're signed up for any reverse 911. So Cruise Aware is our local reverse 911 system that sends a reverse call to your cell phone or a text message. So if you haven't signed up for Cruise Aware, please do so. You can do it through our website, you can do it through the Santa Cruz Regional 911 website, and make sure that you're getting that alert. And that's gonna be your first signal to something's going on. And it may just say, there's a wildfire happening over here, no evacuations are needed right now. So, but make sure, I have the website here, but I'm gonna put all these links on the front of our website with a page so that you guys can go to scottsvalleyfire.com and download that. The other way you're gonna be notified is door to door. So just police officers, firefighters going door to door, community service officers just trying to let everybody know that evacuation is underway. The other good website we have, and there's also an application for it, it's known as Genesis. And Genesis used to be known as Zone Haven. Anybody familiar with Zone Haven? No? Okay. So, and every parcel in the county is grouped into a particular zone. And as firefighters, when we start to set up evacuations, we look at these zones and we start evacuating. We try not to pick a bunch of zones at the same time because we're trying to filter people out and not have a mass rush of evacuations. But depending on what's going on with the fire, we may have to do multiple zones. And I'll show you kind of a picture of what it looks like here in a second. Temporary evacuation point. A temporary evacuation point can be something like a local school, community center, that kind of thing. That info will try to get out there as soon as possible depending on what's going on once we get the logistics set up for a temporary evacuation point. So this is the Genesis project. As you can see here, these are the different kind of evacuation zones. This is just a small screenshot, but you can sign up for this and see exactly where in your zone you are located and know your zone, know which one you are. So as you can see, we have Mount Herman, Highway 17, Scotts Valley Drive, and you can see the different sections here. These are the evacuation areas. So if you know that zone, and that's when you see evacuation updates, they're gonna use those numbers to let you know which zones are being evacuated. So really important that you sign up for Genesis, take a look at it, know your zone. So another great site is called Safer. The County of Santa Cruz has a Safer site. Again, I will put it up there. It's an ArcGIS site. It's interactive. It updates you pretty regularly on all types of conditions, PG&E outages, evacuations, road closures, wildfire info. So very early on, this is a great spot to get early info on what's going on around the county. So, Pulse Point. How many of you have Pulse Point? Yeah. Pulse Point 2 is another good application. It will notify you of emergencies that are happening near and around you. You may smell fire and think, oh my gosh, something's going down, and there is something possibly going down. But then at Pulse Point, you can look at all the different agencies and see what incidents are working. And oftentimes you'll be like, oh wow, there's a fire in Felton, but I'm smelling it in Scotts Valley. So a better application for fires, specifically wildland fires, is what's known as watch duty. And watch duty gives real-time updates as to what's going on with the fire. It's got people that are actually like specially trained that are giving updates, listening to scanners, that kind of a thing. They're trying to give real-time updates, and it's a free application as well. And that can tell you what's going on with the fire. Even at some of the smallest fires, I was amazed to see, like a 1 or 2 acre fire, they'll put it on watch duty and it'll come up and kind of recite what the incident commander's saying, or they're releasing resources. You hear stuff like that, you know the fire is doing well. So scanrad.io, that's just another thing. If you wanted to listen to our radio traffic, you can listen to that as well. It has all the fire channels on there. So also has them for Santa Clara County, a bunch of different fire agencies. So just another thing. Alert California. Alert California is also another website that you can actually look at live fire cams. Now we have several fire cams located across the county. One's up on West End, the Dream Inn, Bonnie Doon, a few others. Media outlets. So here's something you have to kind of be a little cautious about, and that's social media. Not always reliable. The best way to look at social media is to look at it through an agency, official agency social media account. I would not take, certain groups and things like that as what's going on. If we're going to release it ourselves or CAL FIRE or whoever, it's 100% true. So just be wary of certain social media. And the big thing, and I hate to say this, but calling 911 for information, when we're having a big emergency going down, it's tying up the lines. And if we have people that are trapped and stuff like that and need to get, into 911 and they can't, that's going to be a big issue for the call center. So this is that Safer website. Again, you can see it's got everything from PG&E, shelters, facilities, roads, weather, alert cameras, live traffic, all kinds of stuff, purple air, you name it. So, and it shows the same kind of similar zones over here, and any type of evacuation warnings or shelter in place or orders you'll see over there on the left-hand side. So what to do if you're trapped in an evacuation? Is it safe to shelter in place? It may be, depending on what's going on with the fire. It also depends on what you've done to your home to prepare for it. We look at homes in 4 different ways, okay? Is it standalone? Is it prep and stay? Is it prep and leave? Or is it we're gonna do a safety drive-by to make sure nobody's there? So oftentimes homes can stand alone, and in that case, if you can't get out, then sheltering in place would be okay. But just realize, during the initial incident, 911 centers are gonna be extremely busy. You know that you can also text 911? Santa Cruz Regional has that available. But you need to make sure that you put the information that's needed. Where are you being trapped? What are the conditions present? How many people? What assistance needed? Trapped, disabled person, disabled vehicle, those kind of things. So, unfortunately, people do get trapped. And what do you need to do if we can't reach you? Well, first, it sounds easy, stay calm, right? But you want to move to an area that's void of vegetation. At least a parking lot is a good example of that. So, or someplace like well irrigated, like a big lawn or a golf course. So, identify safety zones that we call them safety zones in fire service. Identify those in your own neighborhoods too. Look around. Where would the first place I would go that's closest to me where I know I could probably be safe around fire? So, irrigated pastures, golf courses, parking lots, etc. So if you're in your car and the fire starts to come around, stay in your car. Because what I've seen on fires is basically cars will shut down because they no longer get oxygen, the smoke is coming in. The worst thing you can do at that point would be to get out of your car. So, because then it's going to put you right into the superheated thermal air that's out there. Keep your windows up. Keep your doors closed, lay on the floor in fact. Protect yourself, put a blanket over yourself. And then after what happens with fires is that when they blow past, they do it pretty quick and pretty violently. Okay, so you'll have to assess the hazards as they come. Obviously, if your car starts catching on fire, you're gonna need to get out. Same thing, you can do the same thing with your home. A home is the last resort, but a home would be the last place that you would have to go in there if you're trapped, okay? And then letting the fire front go through, and then getting out when it's safe to do so. So unfortunately, this does happen from time to time, and it's even happened locally. So we did have somebody that perished in the CZU on Last Chance Road, and that was obviously the case with a lot of people during the campfire. One way that you can help connect with us is through our Scotts Valley Fire Community Connect application. It's, again, through our website. And what that does is that it gives us information about your house and your home, as little or as much as you want. And the big thing would be to connecting with you, so we have a name, a phone number, we know if there's pets in the house, we know if there's any special circumstances, and you can add that in through our application. It's by a company called First Do, and it's called Community Connect. So, and that may help, and we may use that if we're out and about in a fire spot and be like, hey, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we're at your house right now. I got your number from Community Connect. We see this, that, or the other going on. What would you like us to do? So, and that does happen. But this Community Connect will help us learn more information about your house. And it's not just for wildfire stuff. It may be for medical reasons, right? So, any important information and it's purely just for the firefighters. This doesn't go out to anywhere else. It just stays with the fire department. So, anyways, so that's kind of my presentation. I know I went a little bit long, but is there any questions, anything like that? Oh, no questions? I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, I'm talking. Hey, thank you, everybody. This is a great crowd that came out, so appreciate it.
Good evening, folks. You've kind of taken the first step in being here and learning about these issues, but as I and other presenters talk about this material, I would kind of lay out a challenge to you. Resolve to yourself that there is something you're going to do with the information that we give you tonight. This is excellent information. I hope to add on what Chief has provided, and I know there will be a lot of other good presentations, but I would ask you, take something out of this tonight that you will go and do. And I'll ask you to just kind of commit to that for me. My name is Andrew Clark. I've worked for CAL FIRE off and on since 2019. I'm a defensible space inspector. I inspect houses for wildfire safety. This, of course, is our San Mateo Santa Cruz unit. Lightning Complex was named for our unit, which is kind of awkward, but in 2020 we had catastrophic wildfire touch the county. We got lucky. We don't like to rely on luck. So hopefully things will turn out, and knock on wood, we will not have a catastrophic wildfire in the next 30 years. But if somebody had asked me 2 years ago, are we gonna have a catastrophic wildfire on the island of Maui, I would have said, are you kidding? And well, it's happened. So I just would ask everybody to be as ready as we can for what could happen. So the first part of getting ready is talking about hardening your home and creating defensible space. And these are two different things. The idea is that hardening your home has to do with doing changes to your home, changes to the environment around your home, and in a perfect world, everyone would have a non-flammable roof and stucco walls and double pane windows and enclosed eaves, and every single property in the Scotts Valley Fire District and in Santa Cruz County would have been built after 2007. Well, that's not realistic, that's not going to happen, but we do have these quick wins. We can look for things that we can do that will make a difference. I'll try to identify those, but I'm going to be going over a very complicated subject in a short period of time, and I've sometimes compared it to eating one potato chip out of a bag of potato chips, and then I finish the whole bag of potato chips and I'm still hungry. So I would encourage you to take a look at the home hardening things and the defensible space things that I talk about. Take one thing with you to go do out of this, but realize there's going to be a lot more potato chips after that first one. Defensible space here on the right talks about creating space, managing the vegetation around your home. Now, there's many misconceptions about that. One of them is that I have to surround my house with 50 feet of gravel or concrete. That's not quite correct. I have to chop down every tree that's near my house. I've heard tree companies say that. That's not quite true either. So what we're talking about is creating that space. And when we talk about defensible space, that implies active defense. That implies that fire personnel will be available and will make a good faith effort to defend your home. I wish I could guarantee that, but between home hardening and defensible space, that gives us a chance. So this is an example of home hardening. And so let's see, make sure I've got my clicker here. Can everybody see the little dot moving around? Any cats in the room? No? Okay, good. So first priority is the roof. Our enemy is embercast, and we'll show you embercast, but you have little charcoal briquettes, a little bit of burning potential. You can almost step on it, you can almost brush it away, but what it'll do is it'll land on something and cause a fire. So we're always after people, clean off your roof, have a non-flammable roof if possible, certainly have what we call a Class A roof or asphalt roof that's rated to resist embercast. And why would we go around telling people to clean off the roofs? It's because if I have accumulated duff, debris, redwood needles, oak leaves, what have you, especially in the gutters, and ember lands in that, the roof will resist embercast, but it won't resist burning material on your roof, which is why we're always after people to clean off the roofs. Next, we talk about within 5 feet of the edge of the house and the envelope of the house itself, we don't want embercast to get in the house. So for example, if I were to evacuate in a hurry and leave my door open, embers would get in the house through the open door. We want to close the doors, close the windows. We want any edges like the bottom of the garage or any vents. We look for a number 1/8 of an inch or smaller. And if you look at the table that they had out there, they actually have 1/8 inch mesh at the table for Fire Safe Council. So we're looking at that number of an envelope of 1/8 inch or smaller. We want the ember to be sad, it doesn't get a chance to start the fire. Then within 5 feet of the house, we talk about what we're now calling zone 0, where we've learned the hard way, campfire is part of it, that things that are near the house that catch on fire communicate fire to the house. And the way I try to summarize it for homeowners, little stuff ignites big stuff ignites house. So let's imagine I've got a deck, I have an ember land on the deck, it's not very likely to ignite the deck. Now I have a pile of firewood under the deck. The pile of firewood ignites from embercast, that ignites the deck, that ignites the house, we're off to the races. So we want to break up that relationship wherever possible. So we have a website, readyforwildfire.org. Chief with Scotts Valley Fire gives a lot of good local tips, a lot of good local information. Our readyforwildfire.org is intended to talk generally about information that applies statewide. But think about home hardening, and especially, I was thinking about replacing that deck. Maybe remove that deck. I'm thinking about a roof replacement, and asphalt has a 30-year rate of return. Get a quote for composite, get a quote for metal. You may be pleasantly surprised at what you can afford. But look for those opportunities, both in terms of quick wins, but also in terms of if I'm doing renovation work, can I make this a little more hardened than it is today? So we look at defensible space, and this is kind of a scary image, but this is the environment in which wildland firefighters fight fire. You see how it's not a wall of flame, it's not backdraft, it's not this horrific thing, but see all these little things flying through the air, this swirl. These are all embers, and it's kind of a numbers game. An individual ember might land on something and not ignite it. 10 embers, 100 embers, 1,000 embers, they will find the vulnerable part of the structure, whatever that vulnerable part is, depending on how many embers fly. And these embers fly 1 to 2 miles downwind of the main fire event. We look at that number anywhere from 1/8 of an inch to, during Boulder Creek, I heard stories about 5-pound chunks of flaming redwood falling 50 feet from a burning house. So that's what we're looking at when we're looking at embercast, is these little sparks that we don't want to spark joy when it comes to people's houses. So defensible space zones. We have this first zone, this is the house itself. Zone 0, that's at 0 to 5 feet. And we found that the majority of the risk to your home is within that 5 feet. That includes the attached deck. So when I say 5 feet from the house, I mean 5 feet from the attached deck and especially underneath the deck. Your ordinary wood siding. Do people here have ordinary wood siding? Anybody with wood shingle siding? Okay, Good news, even your shingle siding can resist a lot more heat than you would think. However, we want to give it the best chance we can by creating that space, that 5-foot no burn zone around the edges of the house. And if I would encourage you all, when I go out and do a defensible space inspection with the homeowner, I ask, can we walk around the house with you, and I'll tell you what I see. I would encourage you all to go home, walk around your house, see what you see, think to yourself, what's within the 5 feet of the edges of your house that can burn? That's the first step. The next is the management within 30 feet, which is we talk about fuel reduction, and then out to 100 feet where we talk about fuel management. So we have a couple more slides on that. This is our zone 0. This is our ember resistant zone. So you see here right up against the edge of the house, we've got gravel. We've still got plants and pots. We've still got bushes. We've still got trees. We're not creating like a cleared zone, but we are creating a line where I can say, this is where the house is, and if ember cast lands among all of this, it's not going to ignite the house. So zone 0 is where we get the best bang for buck, the best rate of return, and I would encourage you as part of your planning, if you think there's a fire nearby, that's a good time to clean out your zone 0. So, next up is zone 1, lean, clean, and green zone. So now we're going outside the 5-foot zone, which is here, we're going out to 30 feet. And you notice that we have individual plants, relatively low plants. We could have an individual specimen. We could have a tree, we could have a redwood, we could have stuff within this, but the idea is we don't want anything dead, we don't want anything dying. And just because a plant is native does not mean it can't be a fire risk. It all has to do with how much moisture is in that plant. Because some of our fire ecology plants love a fire because it takes out the competition. Some of our fire ecology plants love fire because they just plan on regrowing immediately afterwards. Manzanita is a great example of that, being fire obligate. So then we go into zone 2. Now we get to a 30 to 100 foot zone. Does this look a little more like our homes? A little different? So you see, common sense, embers are not going to ignite this tree. I have unfortunately inspected homes where the foundation is what's left and the trees nearby are just home. That tells me that the trees were never a threat to the home. So individual trees, spacing between the trees, dealing with what we call ladder fuels or fuel continuity, where a little thing grows into a bigger thing and then grows up into the crown, into the top of the trees. Having that space around the things that can burn, your wood piles, anything that you have. Now this is 30 to 100 feet from your home. And there is a regulation that your firewood needs to be kept at least 30 feet away from your home. Do you know how often I don't see that in our mountains? Okay? Please use up your firewood before we get to summer, or store it more than 30 feet away from the home. The home you save may be your own. So, this is ladder fuels. This is fuel continuity. So, we see the shrub, the bush, the small tree, the big tree. These are just, it's choked. They're too close together. And in nature, there would have been a small creeping ground fire that took this out, and then this is what we would have had. But if nature doesn't do it for us, we have to do it ourselves. And so we ask, especially in that zone 3 around your home, deal with the continuity of fuels. Think about the spacing. That's key to stopping wildfire spread. And that's a more complex issue when we start protecting entire communities. But has anyone ever been to our nearby Glenwood Open Space Preserve? Glenwood Open Space Preserve is a classic example of community-oriented fuels management. So, going to a wildfire action plan. And some of this information is going to duplicate what Chief talked about. I'm going to try to keep it short for that reason. But we find if you have a plan, even if you don't do everything that's in your plan, you will still get more done than if you didn't have a plan. Okay, so if I have a plan and I have a few items on the plan, maybe I don't do them all, but I still get more done than if I didn't have a plan. So I would encourage you, work out with your friends, family, housemates, a designated emergency meeting area. Where are we all going to get together? Then designate an alternate. Where are we going to go if that one becomes unavailable? A friend of mine evacuated from Boulder Creek to Scotts Valley and then evacuated from Scotts Valley to Watsonville, and have that backup plan. Identify different escape routes if possible. So when Chief talked about there's one way in and out of Weston Road, that is true. There is one publicly known way in and out of Weston Road. But it scares me having somebody go down an unfamiliar forest road, possibly in the dark, possibly in the smoke. I would prefer to go out the main route if at all possible, but know all your routes, know all your options. I remember one time I lived in Boulder Creek and I was trying to get from San Jose where I worked to Boulder Creek. My route took me through Woodside, Davenport, and Bonnie Doon to get back. But it was an open road and I took it. Know your routes, know your roads, know your area. Have an evacuation plan for your pets and for your livestock. Have a carrier for your pet. Have a picture on your phone of you holding your pet. Have that proof of ownership. Make sure your pet is chipped. Make sure the chip information on the chip is current. Have a family communications plan. Have an out-of-area contact. So I have a friend of mine in Florida who has to deal with hurricanes all the time. We don't have to deal with those in California, thank goodness, or do we? But I have a friend of mine in Florida. She has my number, she has my friends' numbers, and I can call her to tell her what my status is, and then she can call my friends here. She's out of zone. She's not going to be affected by my local disaster. So have that out-of-area contact that all the friends and family can check in with that aunt in Philadelphia or that friend in Cleveland who is not going to be affected. So the wildfire action plan should be prepared by you, your family, your loved ones, and it should be a living document. So, next here, the 6 P's of evacuation, and this is just a mnemonic to help you remember it. People and pets. People and pets. People, life. Everything else we can work our way around, but people and pets are not replaceable. Papers, phone numbers, and important documents. I grew up in an age before cell phones were a big thing. How many of you know the phone number if you were suddenly, okay, you get your 3 phone calls, who are you gonna call when you don't have your phone? Do you remember a number? You remember 3 numbers? You might want to remember a number or 2. You might want to write them down in your wallet, because what if your cell phone doesn't work, or your cell phone's out of charge, or you can't power on your cell phone to check those numbers? Know a few numbers. Your prescriptions, vitamins, eyeglasses, these are things that are hard to replace. Okay, Lens Crafters promises, 24 hours or what have you. There's other optical shops, but if I don't have my prescription, it starts to dovetail, it starts to mushroom. Medications, if you have your medications of a major pharmacy, and that major pharmacy can refill them, hint, hint, but it's good to have not only a copy of your prescriptions, but the actual prescription medications themselves. That would be a good thing to have a few days supply in your go bag. Pictures, irreplaceable memorabilia. I'm going to emphasize the idea of irreplaceable. If I can buy it in a store, generally don't evacuate with it. Evacuate with the things that you can't buy in a store, the things you can't replace, the things that aren't just money. Your family albums, your photos, your memorabilia, those things that are imperative to you. Personal computers, hard drives, disks, your data. Some people like to keep data in a flash stick or hard drive. Some people like to keep it on the cloud. Some people are belt and suspenders and like to do both. But we had a major water utility that had a backup at an officer's house. And that's great, because when their plant burned down, that officer's house also burned down, so they lost all of their customer data. So if you own a business, think about your backup for your business data too, and your business plan data as well. Last but not least, have some plastic. Credit cards, ATM cards, cash. The hotel feels sorry for me, but I still need to throw that credit card down on that hotel room, or I need to throw that credit card down on that rental for my car. So having a few $100s on a credit card and a little bit of money in cash may make a huge difference in my comfort in the first day or 2 of an event. So that's kind of the 6 P's. People, papers, prescriptions, pictures, personal computers, and plastic. All right. So our website, readyforwildfire.org, has a lot of general information. It's kind of a starting point to this subject. We do have a lot of specific presenters, a lot of good information for you tonight. Thank you very much for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
I'm much shorter, so I'm going to move this down. Hi, my name is Sally Mack. I'm a resident on the east side of Summit Road, down SoCal San Jose. I'm a Firewise leader for my community, Terrace Grove Road, and the last couple of years I've been doing Firewise coaching for other communities that are interested in the program or need help along the process. So I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the program. How many of you have heard of the Firewise program? Okay, great. And how many of you are in a Firewise community? Okay. And how many of you have friends that you know of in a Firewise community? Okay, wonderful. Okay. So the Firewise program is hosted by the NFPA, which is the National Fire Protection Association. And as of today, we have over 2,000 sites across the country, and we have 744 sites in California. And the goal of this program is to keep homes, lives, and neighborhoods safer from wildfire. So we've heard a lot about what you can do as an individual to keep your family safe. Now we're taking it to the next level for community preparedness. So today, these are the 56 Firewise USA recognized communities in Santa Cruz County. Here we have a close-up of the communities in Scotts Valley and San Lorenzo Valley communities. We have 3 in Scotts Valley and about 9 in San Lorenzo Valley. So you're amongst several Firewise communities already. So this is just some of the stats from 2023. We had 56 communities, over 4,500 homes, and $11.2 million of personal money was spent on risk reduction. So these are individuals who are hardening their homes, maybe they're changing out a roof, they're hiring a landscaper to remove an arbor, create more defensible space. And there was over 112,000 volunteer hours. So you can see from 2022, we've increased about 14 communities, but the money and the hours have almost doubled. Now we know that 2 winters ago we had a pretty severe winter, so there's a lot of work that Mother Nature had us doing on tree work. Okay, so the Firewise program is a framework to reduce wildfire risk for your communities and first responders. And in a second, I'll go through the six steps that it takes to go through the process. It's free to apply. There's no cost, and it's completely voluntary. So for neighborhoods, this isn't an enforcement action. It's very education focused. We're trying to educate our neighbors and our community. We have all the great information that we heard earlier to get the work done at the community level. So how many of you have started doing some home hardening or some of your own defensible space here today? Okay, wonderful. That work is invaluable to your community, and it's even more invaluable when your neighbor next to you, who has that fence that's connected to your house, does that work as well. So this is the important reason why we need to start working at the community level. I moved up to the mountains 7 years ago. I was 6 months pregnant, and I was kind of a sign-up junkie. I signed up for the free evacuation workshop and the Firewise presentation. And as I was doing all this work on my home, I realized that's great, but there's only so much I can do if the neighbor above me hasn't done their work, and I'm trying to get out of my one way in, one way out road. So we're getting neighbors to work together, and this is the 6-step application process. This is just one picture of a community doing a work party. It's pretty common. You can get your neighbors to come out and work on the vegetation along your road. You can do a lot more clearing work and making sure that there's enough clearance for emergency vehicles to come down. And these are some of the benefits. So when I moved up to my neighborhood, Terrace Grove Road, we had about 27 houses. Didn't know anybody. didn't know who was at the bottom, didn't know who was at the top, didn't know how to communicate with anybody. We had a phone tree, and we put on a FireWise presentation, and the neighbors start to come together. So I start to know. Joel at the top owns a chainsaw, somebody else down at the bottom owns a chipper. You start to get to know the resources on your road. And you can tackle vegetation management more easily. You can start to talk about evacuation plans. It's great if you have an evacuation plan for yourself and your family to get out. But say you need to talk to your neighbors and find out what's going at the bottom. I smell smoke. Or what's going at the top. I smell smoke up there. In our minds, we think that we've ran through the scenarios. But when there are more people involved, thinking through the process ahead of time really is valuable. Emergency communication. So how many of you have a phone tree or a group messaging app or with your other neighbors so that you can talk with them? Okay, there are a few of you. That is crucial. We always think that we can go knock door to door or pick up a phone, call a landline or call a cell phone. Having some kind of communication system or multiple communication systems is really important. Build goodwill with your local fire professionals. So we kind of joke that this FireWise sign is something to brag about. It is also telling your local fire departments that you have done the work. You have done the defensible space work, you've done the home hardening work, you have talked to your neighbors, you're coordinated, and when they're driving by, they see that sign and they remember, and they're more likely to go down into your neighborhood to fight the fire. With the program, you also have access to other programs through the Fire Safe Council, the OR3 resource conservation districts, such as the free chipping program that they offer every year. There is also potential grant funds. And the last, which is top of mind, which I'll let the insurance portion of this talk discuss, some discounts, or at this point, just holding on to your insurance. Okay, so here are the 6 steps. Form a board or a steering committee and comprised of neighborhood residents and other wildfire stakeholders to organize and drive the process. This can be 3 people, 5 people, it doesn't have to be a large amount. This is just people who believe in the program and really want to push it forward in your neighborhood. The next step is to complete a wildfire risk assessment, ideally including input from the fire department with your jurisdiction. So you'll have someone come and they'll walk the road with you, and they're not pointing out individual homes. They're really just kind of seeing, do you have good signage? Are you marking your hydrants? Is the vegetation overgrown? If we're bringing a truck down here, can we see around the corner? These kinds of things. And then you're required to host a minimum of 1 wildfire risk reduction event. That could be a road association meeting where you're doing a presentation on home hardening. It could be a block party where you're going to have multiple presentations. You could watch a video and all discuss it as a community. There are lots of different ways of achieving that. Then step 4 is to develop a 3-year action plan based on your site's risk assessment. So the walk around that you've done on your neighborhood with the fire chief, then you take that and then you roll it out into a 3-year plan. What do we want to achieve in year 1? What do we want to achieve in year 2? And what do we want to achieve in year 3? Now you don't have to tackle every single thing on year 1. Year 1 might be just creating a key turnout for a fire truck to come down, or making sure all of your neighbors have clearly marked reflective signs with 4-inch or larger numbers. And then the 5th step is to meet the minimum wildfire risk reduction investment, which is 1 hour or $27.20 per resident in your community. So if you have 15, 20 people, that's $27 per person or 20 hours. And if your neighborhood is like mine, I can even easily achieve all those hours myself just on my property. And then the last step is to create a FireWise USA account, submit your application. For some people, they can get their response in about 3 days. Some take a little bit longer. And then you get your signs. Okay, so here are just some quick examples of neighborhood activities that you could do for your investment hours. You could have brush clearing days or chainsaw days. Work parties are really popular. Marking your fire hydrants with blue reflectors and making sure road and driveway clearance is adequate for 14 feet by 14 feet. Making turnouts, creating a GIS map, doing evacuation drills, planning for these events. Those all count. So here are a few more pictures of what it looks like in action. Community members getting together, they're renting a chipper, or someone on this community has an excavator. And then this is my friend Lynn's community and her sign. So what's next? Well, assess your community and see if they're interested in pursuing FireWise. My community, it was just a handful of us. I think there was just 2 or 3 people who said, yes, let's get this program going. And then we just started to meet. And then we just kind of build momentum from there. So you don't have to get 100% buy-in from your whole community. And oftentimes, it takes a few years to build up that momentum. And a few more come along, and a few more come along. You want to identify a steering committee of about 3 to 5 people, and then define your community boundary. Do you want it to be just your road? Do you want to, maybe there are a lot of small roads, and you want to be a larger community with a bunch of micro communities. Or maybe there are a couple of people on the frontage road that wouldn't have another community to be a part of. And then you can do a follow-up presentation where I'll give it to your specific community, and that's it. So if you are interested in this program, there's a table outside and you can put your name down and we'll contact you, and then we'll follow up with next steps. Here are a couple of other FireWise resources for you to check out. Fire Safe Council of Santa Cruz County. That's where you can find out about see the full list of FireWise communities and other resources on how to get started. There's also another program that's great called the HIZ assessment, where we send out an HIZ assessor, that's a home ignition zone assessor, who comes and walks around your property for an hour and goes through many of the things that Andrew talked about. So I know sometimes going through all the information is very overwhelming. Well, we'll send out an assessor for you, and we'll just go step by step, and then they write out a full report and then send you next action steps to follow up with. Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council also has a lot of great resources, and Fire Safe Marin actually has amazing videos, quick snippets to learn about defensible space and evacuation. I really highly recommend that you check them out. Fire Safe Monterey, and then at the bottom is the insurance companies offering discounts. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally. That's actually really motivational. I want to bring that back to my community. And I hope many of you do as well out there. And just a big thank you again to our fire panel tonight. Chief Stubendorf, thank you. Cal Fire Inspector Andrew Clark, thank you so much. Firewise Coach Seth Mack, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And a quick, I can't really see from up here, but I've heard there may be some open seats in the middle. If you look down your aisle and see some open seats, maybe encourage those that are standing there to come through, or if you can, scoot down a few seats so people can get in, just so we can get everyone seated. I know it is a full house tonight. If you have note cards and you have questions, so we're going to be going now through our next set of presentations on insurance. If you have questions for the fire community, they're going to be available at the tables outside afterwards, and you can talk to them directly. More questions about how to set up a Firewise in your neighborhood. But also, if you have questions as you're going through the insurance piece next, write those down. We'll be collecting them before it's over, and we'll try to get through all the questions. And we're running a little bit over on time, so hopefully, if you have the patience and time, we'll stick around so everyone get their questions answered this evening. So next, I'd like to welcome up Richie Saibong from the California Department of Insurance. He's the Associate Governmental Programs Analyst and Community Relations Specialist for our California Department of Insurance. And I'll pass it on to Richie.
Good evening, Scotts Valley. My name is Richie Saibong. Again, thank you for this invitation to be here tonight. We have been meeting with many of you throughout the state, and it's clear that California's insurance is at a crossroads. So natural disasters and global inflation are creating stress on the insurance markets. This is not just happening here, it's happening in every state, and they are experiencing the same factors as listed. Increased costs for rebuilding, labor shortages, increases for insurance. Insurance is harder to find and is costlier. And as risk increases, companies are protecting their obligations to current consumers and limiting new business. So the property insurance market is also changing quickly. Even though 115 insurance companies are currently selling homeowners insurance in California, 12 insurance groups control 85% of the California insurance market. And since 2022, 7 of those top 12 insurance groups have paused or restricted new business despite rate increases approved or pending with the Department of Insurance. So clearly, the problem is more complex and global in nature, and it is affecting us here at home. So on this slide, it does show you 7 of those 12 insurance companies that have either paused or restricted their new policies, even though most have pending or approved rate increases, showing that the problem cannot just be solved by increasing rates. So I'll pause for a moment there so you guys can get photos of that. So let's put this into context. Over the past 10 years, insurance companies in California have done far worse than nationally by any measure. And during those years, California experienced 9 of the 10 most devastating wildfires in our state's history. And as a result, we are faced with a tough question. Can consumers get the insurance they need? The answer is generally no. And because climate change impacts and are accelerating, we need to take actions that expand insurance availability. So how did we get here? And since 2019, since Commissioner Lara took office, we have been consistently monitoring and analyzing the status and direction of insurance availability trends. The FAIR Plan has doubled to 3% of the insurance market, becoming the insurer of first resort instead of being the insurer of last resort, as it was designed. The FAIR Plan is not a state agency. It is run and funded by the insurance companies. A growing FAIR Plan is part of the problem because FAIR Plan policyholders are required to pay more for less coverage, and concentrating the highest risk properties under the FAIR Plan increases the chance that it will be unable to afford another catastrophic disaster. It's really important to understand this point. If the FAIR Plan goes insolvent, insurance companies are on the hook. meaning they had to pay for those unpaid fair plan policies. While this hasn't happened in nearly 30 years, the uncertainty is still driving insurance companies to further limit their coverage to at-risk Californians. And a growing fair plan creates risk for the entire insurance market. And as a direct result of a growing risk concentration in California, the credit rating agency, AM Best, has downgraded outlooks for top 12 companies like State Farm, AAA, and Mercury. And there is a critical fact to know. Unlike public utility companies, which are required to provide coverage to all residents and businesses, under Proposition 103, insurance companies can legally refuse to write insurance unless they are able to meet 100% of consumers' claims, cover their expenses, and earn a fair return. If everyone is harmed if an insurance company goes insolvent because it cannot pay its claims, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'll touch briefly on the Safer from Wildfires framework, as it reiterates quite all the information we've heard from our fire panelists. Mainly the top three, this framework came from Commissioner Lara. It has been inputted by CAL FIRE, Cal OES, all the first emergency responding organizations and agencies. But it is a three-step system to protect your home, surroundings, and community, which in turn provides consumers with discounts and transparency about your risk rating. So under this regulation, we will see more businesses, homeowners, and communities making investments in wildfire safety, greater community resilience, reduced losses from wildfires, and more insurance coverage for mitigated properties. It is important to know that the Department of Insurance does not have the authority to force insurers to write coverage. This regulation does attack the root cause of non-renewals, which is wildfire risk, and they will make Californians safer. And with accurate pricing of insurance, we do expect to see more insurance options for people through a more competitive market. So step one, as mentioned earlier, Class A rated fire roof, pretty straightforward. Closed eaves, fire resistant vents, multi-pane windows, and a minimum of 6 inches of non-combustible vertical clearance at the bottom of the exterior surface. So protecting the immediate surroundings would be step 2. Clearing the vegetation and debris from under decks, clearing the vegetation, debris, mulch, stored combustible materials, and any and all movable combustible materials within 5 feet of the building being evaluated. We call that the BBE. So incorporation of only non-combustible materials into that portion of any improvements to the property of the BBE, which is situated within 5 feet of the BBE. Removal of combustible structures, sheds, and other outbuildings from the immediate surroundings of the home to at least 30 feet. And step 3 is an effort to obtain a community level mitigation designation. This will most likely involve at least one, if not more, local government agencies, fire, emergency services, planning, etc. Community level mitigation designates include FRRC by the Board of Forestry and a FireWise USA in a good standing. The FireWise program is a nationwide program created by the National Fire Protection Association. California does have more than 700 FireWise USA communities with more forming, and it is an important part of California's efforts to ensure communities are prepared against wildfire. Just a quick pitch, in the Ventura County area, which I served for some time, they established the first in the state, and I believe the country, a mobile home FireWise community. That's pretty good efforts there. So let's change gears into the FAIR Plan. The California FAIR Plan has begun offering insurance discounts since August 23rd of last year, and the Department of Insurance does expect to have other insurance companies approved throughout this year. The FAIR Plan has offered a 10% discount on policies participating in a FireWise community since May of 2018. Now the FAIR Plan is offering 2 more wildfire hardening discounts, one for protecting the structure and another for protecting the immediate surroundings. When applied, these discounts will reduce the wildfire portion of the policy's premium by 10% and 5% respectively. Depending on your level of wildfire risk, this can be a large component of your overall premium. So do contact your broker to find out what that means for you, how you qualify, and when you should see those discounts. The Department of Insurance and the FAIR Plan has reached an agreement to increase the commercial coverage limit to $20 million per location, which went effect of November of last year. This addresses the greater needs for recreational youth camps, homeowners associations, wineries, and agricultural groups for additional coverage. And the business owner's policy, or BOP limit, has increased to $20 million and has taken effect no later than last year of December. And another thing I do like to discuss is that most people do not know that insurance companies assign a risk score to your home or business. It's important for people to know because if you know about the risk on your property, you can take actions to reduce them and make yourself and your neighbors safer. This regulation requires insurance companies to give you that wildfire risk score for your property. They have to tell you how they created that score and what factors went into that score. The wildfire risk score or classification must be provided to you at the following times. When you apply for a new policy, within 15 days, before you renew a policy, at least 45 days, before you are non-renewed, at least 75 days, and when you complete mitigation on your property and request a revised score within 30 days. By creating this right of appeal, we're giving power back to the consumer. And if you're not satisfied with what your insurance company is providing you, call the Department of Insurance. That's what we're here for. We're here to tackle that issue. It's important to know that we're not starting all of this from scratch. These actions are building on what Commissioner Lara has been doing since 2019, moving California into a direction of a more modern and resilient market. We have moved forward on wildfire actions and are responding to climate change like never before. We are proud to be the department leading the way for our state and our nation. So I will touch briefly upon this. So I talked about the expansion of the FAIR Plan. Let's talk about the climate response. In our department, we have created the first climate and sustainability branch in the country and established a climate insurance working group, generating California's first ever climate insurance report. And we are working with the United Nations to launch the California Sustainable Insurance Roadmap. So how are we going to modernize this market? The California Sustainable Insurance Strategy is a comprehensive plan with 3 interlocking goals: making insurance available to Californians, creating a resilient insurance market, and protecting communities from climate change. All right. So here are the executive actions and reforms that Commissioner Lara is taking. First, we will increase availability of insurance in wildfire distressed areas. Using our prior approval rate authority, insurance companies will write no less than 85% of homes and businesses in wildfire distressed areas. This is a historic agreement between the department and insurance companies. We will reverse the trend of a growing FAIR Plan and close that insurance gap. And the department will define these distressed areas using a data-driven approach. And the second important part of this plan is we will return FAIR Plan policyholders back to the traditional market, with first priority given to those that have hardened their homes and businesses following the Safer from Wildfires regulation. The next important element of the plan directly addresses the climate crisis. The Commissioner will introduce regulation to utilize forward-looking catastrophe models, prioritizing wildfire safety, mitigation, and transparency. Effectively addressing climate change requires new risk assessment strategies that keep insurance available. Forward-looking models will recognize the clear benefits of investments our governor and legislature are making in wildfire safety, including home hardening, fuel reduction, and prescribed fire. We have a clear template on how to do this in the Safer from Wildfires regulation, requiring insurance companies to provide discounts and increase transparency on wildfire risk scores. We will take input from the public and put the public's interest in safety and insurance access as first as we did in that process. And the last important element of stabilizing our marketplace in the face of climate change, we will also explore California-only reinsurance costs. Reinsurance is a tool that many insurance companies are using to manage their climate risk and continue writing policies. We want to underscore that Californians will not pay for the cost of hurricanes, fires, and floods across the nation and around the world. Under Commissioner Lara's agreement, companies wishing to use these new risk models and assessment tools must agree to increase and maintain their writing in the wildfire distress areas of our state. That's the 85% we're talking about. Increasing writing and removing people from the FAIR Plan. So turning on to the FAIR Plan, we will continue modernizing the FAIR Plan by expanding commercial coverage limits to $20 million per structure, which closes the coverage gap for HOAs, affordable housing, infill developments, agribusiness, who have also been having a hard time finding coverage. Our sustainable insurance strategy is the result of meeting with California homeowners, business owners, fire chiefs, agents, realtors, homeowners associations, summer camps, farmers, and ranchers, and many other insurance consumers across the state. We have held meetings in all 58 counties since 2019, making sure we are taking everyone into account. The issue of insurance availability is imperative for everyone, and we will do our part to improve the market and help us do your part by being safer from wildfires. Here's the Department of Insurance's website and phone number. Quick little input here. If you are dealing with issues with your insurance company, when you're having questions about why you haven't gotten your risk score, give us a call. They are supposed to provide those risk scores to you. And this will be the end of my presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richie, and thank you for making the trip down from Sacramento to talk to us about what's going on here. And I also now would like to welcome our panel. We have an incredible panel we put together, and as I welcome them, I want to thank the three first people I'm going to introduce on their assistance in helping our Parks and Rec department put this together tonight, because they really educated our team on the insurance crisis that we're facing right now. So on our panel tonight, we again have Richie Sayavong from the California Department of Insurance. We have Joel Loucher, who's a program specialist with the United Policyholders. He does have a table out there that you can visit. He's the former Chief Deputy Commissioner for the California Department of Insurance, where he had a 35-year career. And prior to joining the Department of Insurance, he was a commercial insurance underwriter for 5 years. He graduated from our local, he's a slug, UC Santa Cruz. Welcome, Joel. We've got Cami Katie, who she's with Cassidy Insurance Agent. See, Cami is the personal lines manager at the agency, where she's worked for the last 23 years. She's primarily focused on homeowners insurance. She's highly experienced in California's volatile market, possessing an unrivaled skill set with respect to the unique challenges of insuring homes in our county. Eden Cassidy, sitting to her right, is Cassidy Insurance Agency's owner. He's the third generation owner and broker of the agency, where he has worked since 1990. He attended Scotts Valley Schools, Santa Cruz High, and Stanford University. He's a longtime resident of the Santa Cruz Mountains. He sits on the board of the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency, and he represents the rights of private well owners, so thank you. And finally, we have Maggie Barr from Keller Williams. She's a realtor, and she's on the leadership council member at Keller Williams in Santa Cruz. Her office is in Scotts Valley, and she's on the board of directors of our Santa Cruz County Association of Realtors. And she's a member of the diversity committee of the California Association of Realtors. Maggie's been working in real estate for 11 years, and she specializes in mountain property. So thank you all for coming. Let's put our hands together for our panel. So just a reminder, if you have questions that come up, write those down. We're going to collect those as we get towards the end of the presentation. I've already received a few from you, so I'll be trying to get through those tonight. I'm going to start tonight with a question to Eden Cassidy. We've just heard from the state. And what do you see right now when you're writing policies in Scotts Valley and the surrounding communities? What's the effect on local homeowners on the ground here?
Thanks, Derek. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
I've got a slide to put up just to sort of help us see things that we've been seeing over and over again, but hopefully from a slightly different perspective. I want to illustrate the challenge that all of us here in this room, myself as well as a homeowner in this area, in the 95066 zip code, face together. You can see on the map of Scotts Valley there, I borrowed this from CAL FIRE, and this is their April 1st update to the fire hazard severity zones for Santa Cruz County. And you see Scotts Valley there, it's gray, because they're not responsible for Scotts Valley. We've got our own great fire department here to deal with that area. But even the city of Scotts Valley there, you see from the scale at the bottom, at its widest point, it's maybe 2 miles wide. Each insurance company uses proximity to fire hazards as a major determinant for their underwriting appetite. They may not use CAL FIRE's map exactly, but they definitely use something, probably proprietary, each one of them, which includes distance from forest and brush in those hazard zones. Some companies now allow no less than 1 mile of distance from defined fire hazards. Scotts Valley being only 2 miles wide, east to west, doesn't really escape that, right? It can be as clean as you can imagine in the middle of Scotts Valley, right down the stripe of Scotts Valley Drive or Highway 17, and it's still within a mile of one of those areas that we have no control over. You know, I'll never forget the time my wife and I drove up Highway 101 through Santa Rosa after the 2017 Tubbs fire, where they lost 3,000 homes, and saw where that fire cut across a 4-lane highway, Highway 101, and didn't care whether or not there was one of the largest fire breaks you could ever imagine. So every corner of even the city of Scotts Valley is off limits to many insurance companies right now. Of course, we should all pursue mitigation and hardening and defensible space and become fire-wise communities. That all makes perfect sense, I think, to every one of us. No one would argue with that. But we're unable to control everything within a mile of ourselves. So, you know, it's worth mentioning. You know, we're independent agents. We don't work for insurance companies. We work for the consumer. But insurers are not able to price to the risk right now. They can't get the rates that they need. And so, unable to control everything within a mile, they only have a couple of options. They can either tighten the rules or they can stop writing the insurance, and that's what they've done. No major insurers are completely open to write classic homeowners in Scotts Valley and surrounding areas right now. Companies with captive dedicated agents like State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, etc., are completely closed to new policies and actively pursuing, as all of us know, thousands of non-renewals in Scotts Valley, SLB, and many parts of Santa Cruz County. Direct writers like USAA and Geico, the same. Non-renewed policies that we've seen now include many centered in tracts like Sky Park and the Vineyards. That's crazy. That's not something we would have ever seen before. And the lack of markets has meant that almost everything now finds its way to independent agents like us. And I double-checked today, we're the last one left in Scotts Valley and the San Lorenzo Valley. There are no other independents here. There's a few down in Santa Cruz and Capitola, but they've all been purchased or consumed or disappeared. This is not how a healthy, competitive market is supposed to behave. And in addition to the non-renewals, all major carriers that we know of have been approved for or are currently awaiting major rate increases. There will never again be another $1,200 homeowners policy in California. Those days are gone. The average cost to insure a modern home, and even a modern home, is going forward going to be 2.5 to 3.5 times what it was just 5 years ago. And that's like having a second property tax bill, as far as I'm concerned. So the outlook is rather bleak for Scotts Valley and our surrounding areas. The closest thing that we've sniffed that looks like help on the way, you know, with all due respect, was Governor Newsom's mention last Friday of a trailer bill or even an executive order to speed the path for rate increases, which insurance companies refer to as rate adequacy. And that's where we're headed. So.
Yeah, thank you, Eden. That's pretty sobering news. I'm going to start this next question is going to go to Joel, but just to level set, and I'll raise my hand because I'm included in this group. How many of you have been dropped or non-renewed by your insurance company? Can we get a shot of that? Can someone take a picture of that? So, so guess what? You're not alone, all right? I don't know if that's comforting, but we're all in the same boat, and I think that's why we're all here tonight. And so for everyone in this audience, there's probably 10 people in town that are having the same experience, right? So, and maybe more. Joel, so let's say I've just received my 75-day notice. What do I do?
Okay, yeah, everything's a challenge here, but California has at least one of the longest notice periods in terms of letting you know what their next action will be. So that non-renewal notice is required by law to come out 75 days ahead of the non-renewal. So you have 75 days to start shopping. The other component of that 75 days is they have to give you the specific reason for the non-renewal. If that is a thing that is within your control, you have that time to turn that around if you can, right? If it's something about your roof, if you are being non-renewed because you have a wood shake roof, if you can get that roof changed to a composite Class A roof, you can turn around that non-renewal. For a lot of the non-renewals, to keep on the negative path that most of our speakers have engaged in, unfortunately, if it is something that you cannot change, right, and even if it is something you can change, either way, I would start shopping for insurance. Now, you already have heard multiple times tonight how difficult that is. And I will say this could be just, the typical wild goose chase. But there is a page, for example, on the Department of Insurance website called the Top 10 Tips for Finding Homeowners Coverage or Residential Coverage. One of those tips is the 800 number for every insurer that writes residential coverage in California, and I can assure you that 2/3 of them you will have never heard of. You can try your local agents, but they may not have a local agent. But with that 800 number, you can call the company and either ask for a quote directly or to a referral to an agent that might represent them, right? This, again, could be a fruitless effort, but there's no harm in trying this given the only other fallback, and maybe the ultimate thing you end up with, is a fair plan policy. So try those top 10 tips. There's also an insurance finder that can find, agents representing other insurers. Always start with your local agents who are gonna do what they can for you, but often, there's not much they can do. You have to look for the companies that you have not heard of, and you have to start doing everything you can to mitigate your property. Your insurer probably wrote you 15 years ago or 20 years ago for many of you, right? If you look on Nextdoor, the complaint is, I've been with them 30 years and I've never had a claim, and now they're non-renewing me. Well, now you're going to have to make your property as presentable as you can for a new relationship with a new insurer. And even if that ends up being the fair plan, as Ricky pointed out, the fair plan is also giving those discounts for mitigation. So you can do all of that work and still not find another carrier that will write you. But every carrier in California, every insurer has to offer those discounts for every home they do write, including the fair plan. So do what's in your control. Don't feel bad if you fail. Don't let this become an issue between you and your spouse. If you'd only done this earlier, or if you've done that, everybody, as you saw, is facing the same thing. I will say, we probably hearken for the days when we used to, we'd get that renewal and the only thing we'd see is the premium, right? And we'd be all resentful of paying that premium. Now we'd be grateful to see a renewal at any amount. And the expectation, as mentioned on every side here, is that premiums are going to go up significantly. So you just have to be prepared for that. And again, you know, start saving.
Thank you, Joel. So next question, and we talk about reaching out and contacting insurers. Eden, you know, how should I start that process? Which agents or brokers are the right ones to call?
Well, you know, in healthy times, there's a choice between the captive dedicateds, right? The State Farmers, Allstate, etc. There are independent agencies like ourselves who deal with companies that don't sell through those other dedicated agents. You know, they only sell through independent agents like us. And then there are the ones that Joel referenced. You know, companies you've never heard of. A lot of them are great companies with great financial stability ratings, but you've got to sniff them out. You've got to find them. And a lot of them do not sell through independent agents like us. They're out there, but you know, they're not anything that we have access to. You know, we're probably appointed with 85 different companies or more, so we're a lot of independent agents, but they don't all write homeowners. Who should you start the process with? Well, we would recommend one independent agent or broker. If we were in healthier times, we'd recommend you call whoever you're comfortable with their brand, who's a dedicated agent of one of those other companies, and we recommend sniffing things out online. But there are a lot of people that are tempted to call all of the different independent agents and brokers that they can find and start the process in parallel. And that does not, many times that does not serve its intended purpose. All the insurance companies that all of us deal with have contracts with us that dictate how we do business and how conflicts are resolved when two agents show up at that insurance company with the same address to get a homeowner's quote for. And you know, they've got to have their own set of rules. Every company has their own set of rules that they follow. And it's meant to avoid those conflicts or duplicate quotes going out with different limits and different underwriting criteria. So when that happens, a market will get blocked for one or the other or both of those agents. And that can slow down the whole process for you. So you want to do your diligence to find someone that you trust, someone that you think understands your particular risk, your neighborhood, your home, is willing to collect all the information, is not going to tack on a bunch of junk fees to do so, and gives you some expectations and promises a timeline. And as far as independent agents, stick with that person to get you all of the different options that are available out there. Because otherwise you can shoot yourself in the foot and end up with inaccurate or inaccess to the best market for you. Another thing to understand is that all independent agents, when they get a quote from any insurance company, including the FAIR Plan, the rates are exactly the same. The only thing that changes if the agent is unethically adding on fees or is representing the risk in a way that they shouldn't, which is all going to come into play when your house gets inspected after the policy is issued and you find out, you know, the smoke and mirrors are up. So anyway.
Thank you for that. I'm going to jump over to Cami. Cami, what alternative coverage options are available now that you've lost your main homeowner's insurance? What else can you do?
Yeah, I think some of this is going to be a little repetitive here, but I think it's good to, you know, have different point of views address some of these questions. As we've already touched on, a lot of companies have ceased doing business or heavily restricted doing business in our area specifically. That includes working with independent agents like us and companies that we work with, such as Nationwide, Travelers, Mercury, Safeco, Chubb, you name it. They have heavily restricted new business. We personally will, when you contact us, we run each individual property and the address through every single carrier. We will try to attempt to find you a full standard homeowner's policy because ultimately that is our goal and is in the best interest of the consumer. Right now, what we are seeing a trend in our area of non-admitted insurance companies coming into California. We are writing these policies actively in this area as they have taken on a higher risk with this location. If we hit a dead end with the non-admitted carriers, our next best option is to go with the California Fair Plan. You would actually purchase 2 policies, one with the California Fair Plan for fire insurance, and then a second policy called a difference in conditions policy, also referred to as a DIC. That will give you a more traditional coverage package that you would see in a standard homeowner's policy.
Thank you. Now, you mentioned a non-admitted carrier. Is that something I should be leery of? What does that mean? Can they do business in California? Like, do you want to expand on that?
Sure. Non-admitted carriers in the surplus lines market are often very misunderstood. You know, not every insurance company with an A rating and a certain size class wants to open up an office in California and then be subject to the friendly oversight of the Department of Insurance. So many big companies that you may have heard of maintain offices in many, many states. In fact, some of them, all of the states, except certain states where they don't want to be as regulated. So, but those companies are allowed to do business in California on a non-admitted basis. They are insurers that are approved by the Department of Insurance because they've proven financial stability. And then once they're approved as a non-admitted insurer, they're added to a list called LASLI, the list of approved surplus lines insurers. And I checked today, the most recent update of that list, there's 139 companies on it. They're, you know, not all of them are writing homeowners insurance, but they're all operating in California for one type of insurance or another. And, you know, they're subject to different taxes. You know, when we sell those policies to someone, we're not selling them when there is an admitted option or there's a better option from a company that's doing business and domiciled in the state of California. They're not meant to be used that way. They're meant to be used when the market, the admitted market, is unable to fill that insurance need. And then you have to sign a form saying that the company is not backed up by the California Guarantee Fund, which reserves money to cover companies that become insolvent in California. But oftentimes, if you get into the weeds on it, you'll find out that Scottsdale Insurance or whoever it is, the guarantee fund in their own state may have more money in it than the California fund does. Who knows? But you've got to do your research. But non-admitted doesn't mean bad.
Okay, great, thank you. I'll jump over to Joel. Joel, you saw Richie's presentation tonight. Anything you'd like to add on the Fair Plan that you'd like to educate the audience on?
Yeah, I don't know if you have our slides, but
We do. Magic.
we do. All right. Yeah, the Fair Plan, of course, you know, isn't where you want to be, in large part because you're there with a lot of other high-risk business, which means it's business that has had lots of losses, typically, and thus the rates are very high. So the Fair Plan policy, despite only really providing fire coverage, will probably be more expensive than that whole homeowner's package that you had before. And then in addition to that, of course, you're having to add, as you know, has been mentioned here, that difference in conditions policy. And don't think, well, you know, maybe I can do without that. The most common, really, household claim is typically like a broken water pipe of some kind. It's water damage, right? Not fire. Fire can be the most devastating. Water damage is very frequent. And the DIC has the water damage component. It has liability coverage. Liability claims are very few, but they can be very high. If someone has injured themselves on your property, right? High expenses for medical costs potential. So you don't want to give up getting a difference in conditions policy. I mentioned the Department of Insurance does have a listing of the companies that write that. Those are admitted carriers. But you know, even if you end up in the Fair Plan and have to buy that DIC, it doesn't mean you shouldn't keep looking occasionally do not settle for a fair plan for life, right? You know, it's mentioned that things could change. Ensure if the commissioner's plans of changing these two regulations, one on reinsurance costs and one on wildfire risk models, what is likely to happen is that premiums in California are going to increase drastically beyond the increases insurers are getting today. So they are going to be a whole new level of cost. And why is the commissioner allowing this? You know, he's hoping that giving up some affordability is going to achieve availability. And, you know, a lot of people in this room want availability, but it's going to come at a cost. But you're going to want to keep looking for that change in the market and not, you know, do like you did before with your current coverage, where you never shopped again after you placed it. Every year or every few months, you want to go out there and see if you can get out of the fair plan and back into the market. So with a admitted carrier, number one, because as mentioned, that's backed by the California Insurance Guarantee Association. And if you do end up with a surplus lines of carrier, you're going to want to check their financial rating. Make sure they're an A-rated company. And you should know that the fair plan isn't exactly funded by the industry. The industry is its backstop. So the fair plan charges very high rates, so it builds up a reserve to pay its own claims. But it could be overwhelmed given how concentrated its risks are. And if that happened, then all the other insurers would pitch in to pay its losses. So the fair plan and admitted insurers are the most financially sound. And if you do end up surplus lines, look for a high financial rating.
And Joel, so for the add-on for the difference in conditions policy that you're talking about, is that something you'd recommend? If let's say you've already been switched to fair plan, is that something you should definitely add? Is it an expensive option?
It is an expensive option. You know,
okay.
Everything we're talking about tonight is expensive, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Even that DIC is going to be expensive relative to a homeowner's policy. But I mean, as I mentioned, it is a critical component of this financial protection package that you're buying, right? For most of us still, our home is our most valuable asset. You don't want to lose that home because of somebody falling on your property and a lawsuit ensuing and you having no liability coverage, right? You just want to make sure you still cover all the bases that were the basis for creating a homeowner's package. A homeowner's package took those most valuable coverages and put them in one place, so you didn't have to think about it too much. But now you're going to need to, because one's just a fire policy, and to get the rest, you need that DIC.
Okay, thank you. Now, what if I've gone online and I've called every insurer on that list, and no one's going to write a policy for me, and I'm moving to the fair plan now? What do I need to do to apply for it? And maybe I would kick this over to Cami.
Sure. So it's important to find someone who works with the California Fair Plan that you trust, a local agency or somebody you personally worked with, especially someone who is knowledgeable on how the California Fair Plan works, because as Joel just explained, there are a lot of limitations, a lot of exclusions, underwriting requirements, and so it's really important that you take the time to understand and have somebody who's helping you through the process. You should have a very in-depth conversation with this person, your agent, to go over the coverages that meet your needs. It is not a one-for-all across the board. Homeowners policies, a standard homeowners policy includes all the bells and whistles for the most part, right? Other structures, contents, loss of use, liability. Typically, those are built in and a percentage of the dwelling coverage amount. With the fair plan, that is not the case. You have to add all of that coverage in, and one person might want to insure their contents coverage where the next person may want to do very limited contents coverage. It is up to the individual and their needs. So I think it's important to make sure you're having these long, drawn-out discussions, talk amongst your family to decide what is important. Then to apply to the California Fair Plan, it's a fairly simple process. You provide information to the agent, they complete an application on your behalf. They will need pictures of your home, front, usually back as well as the address, which can be on the street, the mailbox, or the house. Currently, quotes are typically, now I'm saying typically, very cautiously here because we don't always get quotes back, but right now we are getting the Fair Plan quotes pretty quickly without a delay. That is allowing us to proceed with policies and close escrows in a more timely manner. I know that's a concern for a lot of people, and we have seen a tremendous amount of improvement with the California Fair Plan there. California Fair Plan quotes are typically valid for 30 days, so make sure you're timing this appropriately with your non-renewal or close of escrow date. You don't want to submit applications too early for several reasons. One, you don't want to inundate the California Fair Plan because they're already having a hard time keeping up. And two, your quotes are going to expire. Nor do we suggest that you move to the California Fair Plan any earlier than you have to. Sit tight. Then once you have a bindable quote and you want to proceed, we collect payment. The policy's effective date can be no sooner than the following day, excuse me. Again, make sure you're following your non-renewal date and or close of escrow date. Our experience with the California Fair Plan and their payout with claims, and I know this is a really big concern for a lot of consumers, is will they pay if I have a loss? Our personal experience is yes, they will pay. They did pay during the CZU, and it was oftentimes quick, responsive, and often at full replacement value. And so typically, we didn't see a big delay with the payout process for a claim. And although, like they have said, it's not ideal, we do believe the Fair Plan with a DIC is an option of last resort.
Thank you, Tammy. Joel, so another thing we heard tonight is about a wildfire risk score. I've heard that mentioned several times. What is that? Does that have an impact on my rates? What does it mean?
So I may have a slide for that. Not that one though. There's one with a couple red circles on it. We can find that one. There we go. Yes. So maybe about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, insurers started using these wildfire models that would identify a particular home and give it a score. And that score was typically based on just a couple components of risk consideration. The slope and the fuel load near the home, and then the accessibility of that home. And considering like how fast can the fire department get there, right? So it's a very simplistic score. Here you can see, I think I've circled 2 locations in the community of Scotts Valley, if you're familiar with that. And those two locations, although they're probably less than a couple miles apart, probably have a very significantly different risk score, right? The closer you are into the main part of town, flat ground, the lower your score. The higher you are up the hill, the fewer the roads that get up there, the closer you are to a fuel load, forest or brush, the higher your score gets, and the less attractive you become to an insurer. Well, so what they do is charge more. But those scores also determine whether you're even eligible for coverage in the first place. So that home, let's say up in the top, that might have more of a fuel load nearby, could do all the mitigation actions possible and still not get coverage because none of those actions really changed the score in all those original models. So if there's the next slide, please. So the scoring models have changed quite a bit for at least some of the main tools insurers use today. They went from that satellite imagery, where you really couldn't even see the home at all, to more aerial imagery, where they can tell a lot more detail about the home. And that can be good for you, or that can be bad for you, right? Depending on what, what your immediate surroundings of your home looks like. So in this case, you can see that the insurer now knows whether there are tree limbs hanging over your home. And actually, some of these same wildfire risk models, not the kind that was talked about earlier that generate ideas of what future losses are, but those which assign scores to the home. So many of those wildfire risk models now have added data components going into the initial score you get. For example, this one that used satellite imagery also, reflects the type of roof you have. So they can tell if you have a Class A roof or a wood shingle roof. It reflects the year your home was built. So it knows what codes were in place when your home was built. When it changed to ember-resistant vents in your area, for example, it would record you automatically as having ember-resistant vents. If you have subsequently put in ember-resistant vents in your home, I suggest you tell your insurer or tell your agent to tell your insurer to record that, right? That is now a discount component. But that's automatically measured by these new insurers. Still, some of the same things occur based on the score that this insurer gives you, now aerial imagery instead of satellite imagery, still determines a lot about how much premium you're going to pay, and it still has a big role in determining whether you're eligible. But at least, those that have done more around their home are getting more consideration of those actions.
Thank you. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here. I'm going to move to Richie. Richie, so our city and our region, we've been working really hard to create affordable housing here in Scotts Valley and Santa Cruz County. And a lot of the homeowners we're seeing are protected under the affordable programs are seeing their policies canceled, and they're going through. I'm sure we have some of them sitting here in the audience tonight. But when their rates go up 3 to 4 times, that's not built into their affordability calculations. Is there anything that the state is doing specifically around affordable housing that's going to work to protect consumers who are in the very low, or moderate income brackets? Are we seeing anything like that?
So,
Might have to hold the mic over there if that's not. There we go.
So I looked into an answer with one of our deputy commissioners. So when insurers are looking and the actuarial science goes into it, they look at the cost of the repair, rebuild, or replace the structure and the purpose of that structure. In our case, affordable housing. It does not factor in the amount of losses paid by insurers. It's simply a matter of what it costs to repair, rebuild, or replace. Currently, there is no law that requires insurers to charge less for insuring affordable housing, and the department cannot force insurers to charge less for insuring affordable housing. And if the legislature does enact a law that requires insurers to charge less for affordable housing, that's where this will have to go. However, it's not really supported by our actuarial data to justify these rates. But hopefully we can come with something in that. There is something that our climate and sustainability branch is working on. This was mentioned during the Board of Supervisors meeting this afternoon, where we have a few pilot projects targeting certain communities where we're providing somewhat like a community insurance. So this is something new that our department is working on, and we're trying to get that data to see the effectiveness of those mitigation efforts, but also targeting these HOAs and communities.
So if someone were to set up a Firewise community, that might impact the rates for the entire neighborhood, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Great. And is another question, I heard you mention this earlier, is the fair plan in danger of insolvency?
No. So this is honestly a scare tactic that's kind of being used out there. As mentioned before, what happens with the FAIR Plan, the last time they've actually gone into that danger zone of being insolvent, what happens is when the FAIR Plan runs out of their residual money, they will assess the insurers, and the insurers on the back end will pay for those policies that aren't covered through what the FAIR Plan has in the residual fund. So say if there was a catastrophic event and it was State Farm that wrote that policy for the FAIR Plan, through their underwriting, if they were unable to cover that loss through the FAIR Plan's money, State Farm will pay the difference that the FAIR Plan wasn't able to pay for.
Yeah, what happens is the FAIR Plan by law, insurers that are admitted in California participate in the profits and losses of the FAIR Plan. And I will tell you from my time at the department that insurers have taken millions of dollars of surplus from the FAIR Plan as profits over the years when there were no major losses, right? That's the way the law was written. But now they're talking about having to pay money, which they haven't had to do in decades. But essentially, the FAIR Plan builds up a surplus, right, by charging rates for catastrophes, and builds up, let's say, $100 million surplus. But in a given event, if it lost more than 100 million, then each insurer in California would be assessed based on its share of the market. Right, so if FAIR Plan needed another 100 million to pay for those losses, State Farm, which writes, let's say, 12% of the state market, would pitch in 12 of those million, and on down the line, right, each paying that 100 million off based on their market share. So that's why, so no one insurer is coming up with the whole amount. It is a liability for them that they don't like, right? Especially as the FAIR Plan gets bigger and is concentrated in wildland areas a lot, because that's where insurers aren't writing. So it is a problem, but it does mean that if you do have a FAIR Plan policy, you are soundly reinsured by the industry at large.
Thank you. And so I have another question for Richie. We talked a little bit about the Firewise community. So right now, and understanding what we've already heard from the insurance brokers, areas like the Vineyards in Scotts Valley or Sky Park, these are neighborhoods that you would traditionally not expect to have any issue getting insurance, right? But even if that neighborhood, and the way they're built, they actually probably are almost already, fairly Firewise as a neighborhood, just from the way they're sized and the homes are spread and the way the vegetation is set up. But those people are getting non-renewed now. They're getting canceled. It's basically happening everywhere in our entire zip code. Can residents here expect a future where they will be able to get policies written again? How long is that going to take, and what should they expect in terms of rates?
Okay. So the goal, of course, of the Commissioner's Sustainable Insurance Strategy, our target deadline for this is December of this year. I do have to note, I cannot disclose the name of the insurer, but there is an insurer that is ready to write policies in your area, in wildfire distress areas of our state, if we get these regulations put through. It's pertinent, there are communities where I served in Mariposa, in Yosemite West, where they have anything and everything, electrical underground, water at the top of the community, everything situated to have the ease of fire access, and yet that whole community is still not renewed. What we're targeting, and as I mentioned, is that once we get these regulations put into place, the people in the communities that are in Firewise communities, that have hardened their homes, that have mitigated their properties, are going to be first on the list to get off the FAIR Plan. That is the goal that Commissioner is very, very set towards. And when you look at rates, as Joel mentioned, we're going to see rate increases, but I do have to mention California as a whole, when it comes to insurance, we're still paying on the lower end of insurance. There are other states where they're paying phenomenal amounts for insurance, but we're still right about towards the middle, towards the bottom of it. So, as Joel mentioned, we're going to have to sacrifice a few things to entice these insurance companies back, but we're also enforcing more rules with them in order for them to do business here. That's really what I covered in my presentation, but it's important for them to have access to these tools because, as mentioned, they're using old historical data. They're not using the new scientific driven data that impacts climate change, that factors in, okay, well, this property had a fire and it ripped through half the property. There is nothing that is going to be able to burn, but yet that person still cannot get any type of coverage. So we're going to address that issue of those non-renewals. And as I mentioned, call the department. If there is ever anything that you feel is discriminatory, especially when it comes to your risk score and the letters of your non-renewals or your cancellations, give our department a call. That is what we're here to do, to address those issues for you. Because as soon as these insurers are hearing complaints from you, the consumer, and we're fighting for you. That is the most important thing. We are fighting for Californians to get that access in a competitive market. That is the goal.
Will it make sense that if we were to increase rates in California, if we allowed the companies to do that? Now I've heard that, and I don't know if this is true, you can fill me in, but I heard that insurers had contacted the California Department of Insurance, and the department sat on applications from insurance companies asking to increase their rates for sometimes 2 or 3 years. And so since they weren't able to increase the rates, they left the state. And so while I know you say that it wouldn't help to allow them to increase rates to get the market back open, is there some culpability on the part of the Department of Insurance in that process that they can take on?
So this is directly from Commissioner Lara. What happens is that in the state of California, under our regulations, insurers are only allowed a 6.99% increase. What that occurs is they'll send in these applications for the 6.99% increase, because if it goes beyond 7%, a hearing is required with the department and the insurance company. What happens is that they'll send these applications into the Department of Insurance incomplete, meaning we sit on them because the insurers themselves are not providing all that information to the department. And with the executive order that Governor Newsom signed last September, enacting and pushing forward the California Sustainable Insurance Strategy, insurers are now required to submit complete packets before the department even looks at anything. So if they're going to even try to request a new rate increase, if they're not putting in the complete packet to us, we're not even going to look at it. And they have to take it back and send it to us when it's complete.
Can I ask, do you have my State Farm slide available?
I'm not sure, but let me finish this and we'll jump to that one next, Joel, because I guess when we're talking about incomplete applications, is it challenging? I mean, I don't understand if it's a hard thing for them to get them in or if it's a game playing strategy.
I'll mention, so an application for a rate change can be 800, 1,000 pages long, and has multiple variables, and of course by zip code, type of home, age of home, all these variables, also projections of loss, separating catastrophic loss and each peril. They're very complicated. And so, insurers, of course, want to make the data lean their direction, and the department, of course, is looking to find, let's say, fault with some of the calculations so that the insurer doesn't get to overstate their rate need. So it's a conflict. I do think during COVID, the department has had a lot of retirements. They lost one of their best deputy commissioners. But
Have you thought about going back?
then I'd have to sit in Richie's seat tonight. I don't know. But it's, so it is a challenge. And again, to the point that intervener groups can come in if you ask for 7% or more, then it does have to go to hearing if a consumer group requests that. So insurers, not only do they only ask for 6.9 to try and avoid that hearing, but they stack their 6.9s, right? So instead of asking for 20%, they send one in, and then 3 months later, they send in another 6.9 increase. So then the department has to filter through that again too. So the law creates a lot of great consumer protections, and I know there's a lot written currently about, well, our regulations are bad, or consumer watchdog takes advantage, or Prop 103 was misguided, but it has provided protection for our citizens for decades. And, some of those have caught up with us as out of date, and now they're needing to be adjusted. And, we'll find out if the commissioner's gone too far, or whether he hasn't gone far enough as these roll out. But, we all get to suffer through it. It's just the reality of the times, and the best you can do is find the best coverage you can find with the greatest agents you can find for the lowest amount available, but it's going to be way different than it was.
Understood. And I'm hopeful to hear that maybe things will start to get back to normal in December this year. And you also talked about the governor's California Sustainable Insurance Strategy. I heard you mention. Is that something that insurers are on board with and they're excited to see implemented, or what's the feedback?
Yeah, so, the commissioner held a global sustainable insurance strategy summit, and, talking with 12 different nations around the world, as well as other states that are experiencing climate change and just catastrophic events. One of the attendees was the insurance commissioner of Hawaii, Commissioner Gordon Ito. He's mentioned, in Lahaina, with the losses they have suffered, the community out there was severely underinsured, and the cost to rebuild there is astronomical as well. From what used to be $100 to $200 per square foot has gone up to $500 to $600 per square foot. These folks in Lahaina are still trying to recover everything and still try to rebuild. It's what's going on in California, it resonates throughout the world. For example, like in Australia, with the bushfires. So what Governor Newsom has pushed forward with the department for Commissioner Lara to take control of this insurance market is that we're going to be hiring more employees to review these rate filings that these insurers are submitting, and also pushing towards, the different risk models and assessment tools. That's what the strategy itself is set to accomplish, to bring back insurers in the state of California. Mind you, yes, we hear the news, this company is leaving the state, another company is going to leave the state. That is all untrue. California is the largest insurance marketplace in the United States, 4th in the world. For them to pull out of California, it's for them to give up their own business, because where else would they get a populous state that has a wide variety of different topography, different geographical location. So in short, the governor is pushing Commissioner Lara to do this, and our target date is December of this year. And as I mentioned, one insurer is already on board. Can't disclose who, but we are pushing towards more, and the regulations and this whole process of the sustainable insurance strategy is transparent. So you as a consumer are able to participate in this process and see where we're going, to hear in our workshops regarding catastrophe modeling, regarding any risk assessment tools. All that is open to the general public, so that you may listen in and see what Commissioner is pushing towards.
It'd be great if we get more than one back in by the end of the year. I mean, I know that consumers win when we have competition out there, and we want to see those markets open again. So I'm happy to hear people are starting to come back, but we really need the insurance office pushing to do everything they can to get the markets back open. And if that's rate increases, I think as Joel said, right now people would take anything, right? Because they just want to have insurance. And a functional market would be better. I don't want to, so I know we've run over time. I'm going to keep going for a little bit, but if you have questions, we're going to collect the note cards at the end of the aisle. I'll try to get to those. And if you've got things to go or times you've got to get out, I understand. But I don't want to forget, we got Maggie here. And thank you for being so patient, Maggie. I want to jump to the real estate side real quick before we lose folks. So if I'm getting ready to sell a house right now, what do I need to prepare for? It's different than just it used to be with respect to insurance. What do I need to know?
Well, I'm going to be brief because I know you guys want to get out of here. My job as a realtor is to set expectations. So even if you're not going to sell your house for another 5 years or so, there's some things to keep an eye on. You can talk to any realtor about that. Robert Aldana is here. He's also from my office. And there's lots of great realtors in the San Lorenzo Valley that specialize in mountain properties too. What you want to look out for is things that you can do in preparation for selling, such as a lot of the mitigation that they talked about, the fire-wise communities, clearing items around your property. Those things will make a big difference. If you're going to do upgrades, that's another thing you can do. Number two is any kind of upgrade you do, like a new roof or a new deck, look at the building materials you're using. Metal roofs give you a lot better protection, for example, than shingle roofs do. And then also, when you get it's time to sell, you'll have disclosures that you give to buyers. You have to include in those disclosures an insurance quote. So if I have a listing, I go to these guys, I call up Cammie and say, hey, I have a seller, I need a quote, we want to disclose it. So as soon as that buyer is interested, we have it ready to go. You also want to set your pricing accordingly, because even a small increase in the buyer policy, not your policy, but the buyer's policy, could make a big difference in the value of your property. So for example, if you're paying $350 now per month, but it's going to go up to $500 per month, that small difference can change the value of your property down by $50,000. So your agent will work with you to understand how insurance for the buyer will make a difference. Then finally, I would say, once you have all those put in place and your buyer is in escrow, sometimes insurance companies do weird stuff. Like I'm just saying, from a realtor perspective, like the seller will see a drone around the property because they're taking pictures. They want to make sure that they're giving you the right rates. I don't know if you guys have run into that before, but so don't be surprised if during escrow some funny business happens and their cost goes up for the buyer. That could cause problems for the escrow. And then of course, as Cammie said, make sure to allow time, because fair plan quotes, for example, could take longer. Like in some of my deals, I have 60-day escrows in preparation for waiting longer if we need to wait longer. And then, did you want to do buyers too?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So just to elaborate, if you have a buyer coming in, you said it's going to maybe decrease the value of the home for the seller. How's it impacting the buyer side? Why is it doing that?
Well, the market will adjust accordingly with any kind of increase in costs. So from the buyer perspective, there's a couple things you want to do. Work with your realtor, work with the buyer's agent that understands how insurance impacts our properties. Some people get agents from like Sacramento or Los Angeles that aren't familiar with the impact of fire insurance, and it can create problems for your deal. So I would say work with a local realtor. Also, you want to take the insurance quote that the seller gave you and throw it out, because you individually are part of what your costs are going to be. So you've got to go back to Cammie and say, okay, this is the name and address or social security number of the buyer, redo the quote, and then also you might find a better deal. I know that some sellers have provided quotes that were, $15,000 a year, but the buyer's agent helped the buyer find a better deal. And remember, like they said, let's say you move in, you're paying your insurance, go check back every 6 months. Maybe it's changed. I know sometimes agents has got quotes from one company for Boulder Creek and it's really high, and then 2 days later, they get a quote for a different buyer, it's low. And the reason that happens is because these insurance companies only want to, they have the number of properties they cover in terms of certain risks changes based on how many clients they have in that market. So don't give up if you're a buyer. Don't say, oh, well, here I am, fair plan, 15 grand a year. That's not true. You need to keep going back. And then finally, a lot of people, to make their offer more attractive, will have no contingencies on their offer, which is something that happens a lot. Well, with these insurance changes, not such a great idea. You could say no contingencies other than fire insurance, for example. That would help. And then finally, you want to take a look at the location. If you're shopping for properties and you have 10 properties, you don't know which one you want, they're all great properties. There are disclosures the sellers provide you that actually have the fire risk score that they were talking about. And you can see the fire risk score on the disclosures on the natural hazard report. So this one is very high, this one is very, very high, right? So you can actually kind of pick the property risk that you're interested in. Some properties that are really far up the mountain, not such great access for fire trucks, have $20,000 per year policies. So it's really important when you're shopping, you take that into account, because your lender will loan you less money based on how high that premium is going to be. So just because you're qualified for $1 million, for example, doesn't mean that it's going to work out. If your insurance is too high, then maybe you only qualify for $700,000. So it will affect your loan. And the last thing I wanted to share, since I know you guys are in a hurry to get out, is just like the Insurance Commission, the California Association of Realtors, there's a local association here, for example, I'm on the board of that. They also take a good look at policies and bills that are being proposed at the legislative level to review those, because they also represent the consumer's best interest, homeowners' best interest, renters' best interest, and we have given legislators opinions. Like at Ledge Day a couple weeks ago, I was sitting in John Laird's office saying that here's some policies. There's like SB 1060 is coming up affecting how insurance companies provide coverage in high-risk areas. We give opinions to our legislators and say, well, from a homeowner perspective, this is what's going to happen. It may look like a good idea, but if you play out the scenario, it ends up creating more problems for homeowners, for example. So, just you want to get a good realtor, take a look at insurance early, and you'll get the best rate possible by doing these things.
Thank you. Now, before we go, still hear me okay? Before we go, I want to quickly go through a few questions from the audience, because I respect the fact that we're over time and I know you want to get out of here, but I've had a few questions that have been passed to me. If you have any others, please pass them down to the end of the aisle. So try to give me quick responses on these. We have a quote, someone writes, from the California Fair Plan that includes insurance for contents. We were told that the Fair Plan does not include contents insurance. Were we confused, or is there something wrong with our quote?
I can take it.
Go.
The fair plan that you have to add contents coverage, but the covered peril, the loss it's covering, such as fire, wind, smoke damage, is the difference that you are going to see from a California Fair Plan versus a full homeowner's policy. The California Fair Plan only covers certain perils of coverage. And so the difference in conditions policy will then supply the additional perils of coverage for content. So you essentially have contents on both policies. One is providing fire insurance. The other is going to be covering items such as water, theft, falling objects, and as Joel said, liability. Of course, that doesn't apply so much to your contents, but you're going to get different types of covered perils from two different policies.
That DIC policy is not an optional policy. I mean, if you still have a mortgage like I do, they want both in place. They don't just want it for you.
So your lender's going to require it. Will being dropped cause an impact on my insurability in the future?
I will say no. An insurer has to have objective, risk-related reasons for how it writes coverage. So if you're dropped for a reason that is an issue with the new insurer, for example, you have a wood shingle roof, it will be the wood shingle roof itself that causes the problem getting new coverage, not the fact that another insurer dropped it. So being dropped isn't the issue, it's the cause of why you would drop that the insurance looking at, plus any other conditions it's concerned about.
Okay, here's a question on if you're choosing the option of not buying a residential fire insurance policy, are there other insurance products available to provide simply liability or personal injury?
Yes and no. You cannot purchase a difference in conditions policy without the California Fair Plan. We, as an insurance agent, as well as the insured, must contest and say that they are also purchasing, and oftentimes we have to provide proof of the California Fair Plan policy. However, you can purchase standalone liability policies. Of course, then you're not insuring your biggest asset, right? You are leaving the home very vulnerable to any major losses. You're only protecting yourself for liability.
And I would add that if you have a mortgage, your mortgage carrier, your mortgage company will place coverage if you do not maintain a fire policy. And that will be added to your mortgage payment, and it will just be for the value of the mortgage, right? So it's not really protecting your assets broadly, other than being able to pay off the loan if that's, if you have that type of loss, it will cover your contents or anything else. It's just to ensure the mortgage company or the lender, gets its, whatever amount of loan is.
Thank you. And then this question, someone asked if we could repeat an answer, but just know for the entire audience, this entire presentation is going to be available again on the city's website, so you'll be able to go back through and hear any questions again if you want to hear repeated. But they also ask, where can we find the ratings for insurance companies? You mentioned, what is their rating? How do I look that up?
There are a bunch of different rating agencies. The most commonly known is AM Best. You can go to ambest.com and look up an insurance company, but there's a whole new breed of emerging insurance companies coming into California that are operating on an admitted basis that do not have ratings with AM Best. They're rated by other different alternate rating organizations that maybe are as stringent in collecting data to back up the rating, maybe not. So, but I would start with AM Best.
This question, how important is it to cover my needs? I got a quote, it's very expensive. So is there an additional option, or is it something I should just, can I get to the FireWise protection without having coverage?
Yeah, I will say that the Safer from Wildfires, initiative includes a discount for enclosed eaves. So it is, insurers have to offer in each of those discounts individually. So if you haven't done the enclosed eaves, you still get the discount for the ember-resistant vents and the Class A roof. The enclosed eaves is probably the last one that most people will do, if they do it at all. For most insurers, meeting all the standards of the Safer from Wildfire designation aren't in their underwriting guidelines. So for most insurers, enclosed eaves aren't a mandate. There are probably a few that are requiring it, but I think I think everybody kind of understands that's both an expensive one to do or difficult to do yourself. So, but don't let that stop you from doing the other ones that are both cheaper and easier to do, other than the roof, which is expensive as well.
And if it's okay, I do want to add to that, Joel, not to step on your toes, but the California Fair Plan gets 2 wildfire hardening discounts. It is for your home and then the surrounding area. There are about 5 different items you have to qualify for within each category to get the full discount. So with the California Fair Plan, you cannot have just enclosed eaves and get a discount. You have to qualify for one. You can qualify for one or the other or both, but you have to qualify for all of the categories within that discount.
Yeah, I think you should mention that. You get a 10% discount if you do all the home-related steps, and another 5% if you do all the landscape-related steps. But only for the fair plan do you have to do all of each of those groupings to get a discount. With every other admitted insurer, you get a discount for each single item and don't have to do them all.
Okay, we're at 8:30, so what I'm gonna do, I do have additional questions, but what I'm gonna do is ask people, if you still have them for individual people, we're gonna be at tables outside. Before we end, I'm gonna ask one quick question. If each of you if there's one suggestion you have for people in the audience, what would it be right now, moving forward, to either help them with their insurance problem, connect, what is the thing you want them to walk away with? Go ahead.
I'll start. One thing I want to remind people is that there are parts of your property that are not in your house that can be really expensive to fix, like big retaining walls. I have lots of clients who lost their home and it's using new fire and they can't rebuild because their retaining wall will cost $400,000 to repair and it's not covered. So when you get a quote from an insurance company, make sure to talk to them about outbuildings, barns, and other structures to see if you can have comprehensive coverage that'll keep you covered properly.
Next.
This might be common sense for some of you here, but we get this very often. You have your renewal with a preferred full homeowners carrier, pay your renewal. Don't question it. I know you don't want to hear that, but if you are with a preferred market, pay your renewal. Talk to your agent if there are things you can do, such as increase your deductible to offset some of that increase, or add a multi-policy discount if optional, but pay that renewal if you've been offered a full homeowner's policy.
Send it in early, okay? Eden?
Tune up your weed whacker.
Joel?
Yeah, with the mitigation, I'll say again, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Do the ones you can, right, and get to the ones you can't later or they're more expensive, but don't let the fact that there's a whole list of them stop you from getting started.
Richie?
For those that are looking for more support in your mitigation efforts, I really recommend working with your your resource conservation district. They do have grant money that is set aside for projects like wood chipping, downing trees, anything to help you mitigate your property. Work with your RCD, they have grant money, and with your support, they're able to get more grants and can do more work to help your community.
Great. Well, with that, if you have additional questions, you can take them outside. I want to really thank our panel for going over time. Thank you all for being here. I hope you took away some really good notes from tonight. So we'll see you soon. Thanks.